That warm September evening under crystal chandeliers at my parents' 45th anniversary party. I watched my father's hand on my son's shoulder and my ex-husband smiling beside him while my daughter pulled at my arm, whispering, "Mom, we need to leave now." I tried to smile to pretend everything was fine, but her eyes were clear, unblinking as she said, "Please, Mom, trust me." I had no idea that night would be the moment I realized the family I thought would protect me was ready to betray me, that they believed my children were their legacy, not mine. If you're watching this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to support this channel, and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. My name is Charlotte Miller, and at 36 years old, I never thought my 16-year-old daughter would be the one to save me from my own family. I always thought my parents' anniversary party would be the moment our family healed. But when my daughter leaned in and whispered, "Mom, we need to leave," now I felt the ground shift under my feet. I stood in the grand ballroom of the Boston Harbor Hotel, the chandeliers casting soft light across white tablecloths and clinking glasses. My father, Thomas Miller, had spared no expense for their 45th anniversary. String quartet, signature cocktails, towers of shrimp cocktail, everything to show the world the Miller family was still perfect. I tried to match the smiles around me as guests offered hugs and polite laughter. But inside, I was trembling. It had been a year since my divorce from Jason Carter, the man my father once called his greatest business alliance. We had built a life I thought was solid until his affair with Tiffany, his 26-year-old assistant, cracked it open and left me trying to raise Ava and Logan alone. Ava, my 16-year-old with sharp eyes and a sharper mind, stood next to me in a navy dress. She picked herself, refusing the emerald gown my mother had sent over days earlier. Logan, 9, was already running between tables, showing off the small suit my father had tailored for him. He looked so proud, so eager to please, just like I used to be. I had convinced myself this party would help us. That if I showed up, helped my mother Margaret with seating charts and flowers, if I smiled and played the perfect daughter, maybe they would see me again, not just the disappointment who had left her husband. But when I saw Jason walk in with Tiffany on his arm, my breath caught. He looked polished, confident in his tailored suit, while Tiffany clung to his side with bright eyes and soft laughter that turned heads. My father's face lit up when he saw them. He hugged Jason tightly, clapping him on the back the same way he used to do when Jason was family. I stood frozen, clutching my glass, unable to move as my mother kissed Tiffany on the cheek, praising her dress, acting like nothing had happened. My parents welcomed them like honored guests while I stood there, the woman they once called daughter-in-law, now invisible. Ava was watching me, her arms crossed, her eyes narrowing every time my father ruffled Logan's hair, calling him our little Miller man, telling guests he was the future of the family. Logan beamed, soaking up the attention, not noticing the way my father ignored Ava when she tried to speak. I tried to pull Ava into small talk, hoping to ease the tension tightening in her jaw. "They're trying to include everyone, honey," I said, my voice shaking. She glanced at me, her eyes dark. "You really believe that, Mom?" Before I could answer, Jason spotted Logan and swept him into a hug. "There's my boy," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You ready for that baseball game, Grandpa promised?" Logan's eyes sparkled as he nodded while my father's arm rested firmly on his shoulder. I felt a crack inside me, watching my son pulled closer to the man who had betrayed me while my daughter stood at the edge of the dance floor, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The music swelled as servers passed trays of champagne, my mother urging me to take a glass. I sipped, trying to calm the panic that clawed at my chest. I needed to get through this evening. I needed to keep it together for Ava and Logan. My father raised his glass, signaling for the first toast, his voice booming as he spoke of family and legacy. Guests cheered, lifting glasses, laughter echoing under the chandeliers. And that was when I felt Ava slip her hand into mine. Her grip was tight, urgent. "Mom," she whispered, her voice shaking but her eyes clear. "Please trust me. We need to leave right now." I felt the room blur around me as I looked at Ava. Her hand trembled in mine, but her eyes held steady, unblinking. "Ava," I whispered, forcing a smile for the guests passing by. "What's going on?" She shook her head. "Not here. Please, Mom. Trust me." Across the room, my father was laughing with Jason, one hand on Logan's shoulder. My son's face was bright, his eyes filled with the joy of being included, being seen. I remembered when I used to look at my father like that. I tried to pull Ava toward the hallway, but she held back. "They're watching, Mom." My mother's voice sliced through the noise. "Charlotte dear, come join us for a family photo." I turned and there she was, flawless in her silver dress, her lipstick untouched despite the wine she had been sipping. Behind her, Jason had Logan by the hand, pulling him toward the photo area, Tiffany trailing behind with a perfect smile. Ava's grip tightened. "Don't leave me, Mom." I bent down to her ear, my voice low. "One photo and then we can step outside, okay?" Her eyes flashed with hurt. "You don't get it." I forced her to walk with me and we stood as the photographer directed us. Logan giggled as Jason lifted him, my father's hand firm on Jason's back, guiding the pose. My mother stood on the other side, Tiffany beside her as if she belonged there. I stood at the edge of the frame, my smile frozen, Ava by my side, her arms crossed, refusing to look at the camera. The photographer counted 3, 2, 1. The flash went off, and for a moment I saw what the world saw. A perfect family dressed in expensive clothes, smiling under chandeliers, pretending nothing was wrong. As the photographer turned away, Ava leaned in again, her voice a blade against my ear. "If we don't leave now, you'll lose everything." I stepped back, my heart thudding. "What are you talking about?" She glanced around, her eyes catching my father's gaze. He was watching us now, his smile, thin eyes calculating. "I can't explain here," Ava whispered. "Please, Mom." Jason approached Logan, skipping beside him. "Charlotte Thomas wants to say a few words." "You should stay." I nodded slowly, my mind spinning, trying to keep my breathing steady. "Of course." My father stepped forward, tapping a glass with a fork, the room quieting immediately. His presence filled every inch of the ballroom just like it always had. "Margaret and I are so grateful for all of you being here tonight," he began, his voice warm, confident. 45 years of building a legacy, a family, a future. Guests murmured in agreement, nodding as they sipped their champagne. My mother beamed at him, her hand clutching his. "And tonight," he continued, "we look to the future, to the generations who will carry on what we've built." His eyes moved to Logan, then to Jason, a small nod passing between them. My stomach clenched, but I couldn't look away. "We're excited to share that our family will continue to grow and our legacy will remain strong for decades to come." The room erupted in applause, people raising glasses, laughter, and cheers filling the air. I tried to smile, clapping politely, but Ava was pulling at my arm again. "Mom. Now." I bent down to her, my voice sharp. "You're scaring me, Ava." She looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes, her lips trembling. "You should be scared." Before I could answer, Jason stepped forward, lifting Logan onto a chair, announcing to the guests. "And Logan is excited to spend more time with us as we make plans for the future." I felt the blood drain from my face. My father's eyes met mine, and in them I saw pity. Or was it triumph? Ava grabbed my hand, pulling me away from the crowd, her voice breaking. "Mom, if you love me, if you love Logan, we have to leave. Right now." I looked back one last time at the laughter, at Logan's bright face, at the smiles of people who thought they were celebrating love. I swallowed hard. I turned back to Ava, my voice shaking. "Okay, let's go." As we slipped out the side door, I felt the cold air of the Boston night hit my skin, the noise of the party fading behind us. I had no idea what I was walking away from or what I was walking into. But for the first time in years, I chose to trust my daughter. If you were in my shoes, would you have stayed or left? What would you have done if you were me? Share in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. My daughter had never used that voice with me, not even when she was angry, while my parents' smiles sparkled under the chandelier light. I gripped Ava's hand as we moved away from the ballroom doors, slipping back toward the hallway. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor, each step a reminder that I was leaving the safety of pretending everything was fine. "Mom, please, we can't go back in there." Ava whispered, her voice, tight eyes darting over my shoulder toward the ballroom. I turned to her, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "Ava, everyone's watching. Logan is in there. We can't just leave." She shook her head, hair falling across her face. "You don't see it. You never see it." I pulled her gently toward a quiet corner near the restrooms, my fingers shaking as I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Sweetheart, I need you to tell me what's wrong. You're scaring me. Ava's jaw clenched, tears glinting in her eyes. You should be scared, Mom. A server carrying a tray of champagne glasses passed, giving me a polite nod, pretending not to notice our hushed argument. I could hear the laughter echoing from the ballroom, Jason's voice ringing out as he joked with my father. Logan is fine, Ava, I said, trying to keep my voice even. He's just spending time with Grandpa and Jason. This is what family does. Ava's eyes darkened. Family, Mom, they don't care about us. They only care about him. I felt my stomach twist as I glanced back into the ballroom. There was my father, Thomas Miller, standing tall and proud, his hand resting on Logan's small shoulder as they posed for another photo. Logan beamed, clutching the small baseball signed by Jason, laughing as Jason whispered something in his ear. Beside them, Tiffany stood close to Jason, one hand lightly on his arm, her smile sweet and unbothered. My mother, Margaret, hovered near them, adjusting Logan's tie, whispering how handsome he looked. I felt a coldness seep into my chest, but I shook my head, desperate to cling to the last thread of peace I had. Ava, please, let's just get through tonight. We can talk about this later. Ava pulled her phone from her pocket, her thumb moving fast across the screen, eyes darting up at me then back down. What are you doing? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She looked up, her lips pressed into a thin line. Trying to protect you. I blinked, the chandelier lights catching in my tears before I could wipe them away. Protect me from what? Ava turned her phone to face me, but before I could see what was on the screen, I heard Jason's voice behind me. There you two are, he said, stepping closer, his cologne flooding my senses, pulling me back into memories I didn't want. Thomas was looking for you, Charlotte. Logan wants you to come watch him cut the cake. I glanced at Ava, who shook her head, firmly clutching her phone to her chest. Jason's smile faded slightly as he looked at her. Ava, don't be difficult tonight, okay? This is important for your grandparents. Ava glared at him, her voice low. You're not my father anymore. His jaw twitched, but he forced a smile, looking back at me. Charlotte, we don't want to make a scene. I swallowed, nodding slowly, my hands shaking as I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I'll be there in a moment, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Jason gave me a long look before turning back toward the ballroom, leaving a faint trail of cologne and tension in the air. Ava grabbed my hand, her grip fierce. Mom, please listen to me. I looked at her, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. I've seen the papers, Mom, she whispered, her voice trembling. They're planning something, and if we don't leave now, you'll lose everything. My breath caught as I stared at Ava. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with urgency. What do you mean you've seen papers? I whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was near. Ava's hands were trembling as she clutched her phone to her chest. Mom, I saw Grandpa's documents the last time we were at the house. He left them out in his office. I shook my head, trying to swallow the panic rising in my throat. That's private, Ava. You shouldn't have. I know, she cut me off, her voice cracking. But I saw your name, Mom, and Jason's and Logan's say. My knees felt weak and I leaned against the wall, trying to keep my breathing steady. The soft music from the ballroom floated through the hallway, mixing with the muffled laughter of guests who had no idea that my world was cracking open. What did you see, Ava? I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. She opened her phone, her thumb hovering over a photo before pulling it back. Property documents, Mom. Trust papers. There were red stickers everywhere and your name was on them, but it looked like they were changing ownership to Jason. I pressed a hand to my forehead, trying to make sense of her words. That doesn't make any sense. Your grandparents would never do that. Ava let out a shaky breath, tears pooling in her eyes. They would, Mom. They are. I tried to pull her into a hug, but she stepped back. Please, you have to listen. Grandpa is planning something with Jason. I heard him talking about Logan, about how he's the future of the family. They're using him. The air felt heavy around us, pressing down on my shoulders, making it hard to stand. I thought about the way my father had looked at Logan tonight, the way Jason had his hand on Logan's shoulder, guiding him around the room like he already belonged to him again. What are they planning to do with Logan? I asked, my voice nearly a whisper. Ava looked away, blinking rapidly. I don't know everything, but Aunt Renee told me to watch out. She said Grandpa did this before with her. He made it look like she was unstable so he could take her part of the inheritance. She thinks he's trying to do the same to you, Mom. I felt like the ground was moving under me, everything tilting as I tried to hold on to the last bit of hope that this was a misunderstanding. I thought about the bills piling up in my apartment, the way my father had offered to help with Logan's tuition if I stayed close to the family, how Jason's lawyer had recently called about revisiting custody for Logan's best interest. Ava wiped her tears, her voice steadying. They're going to try to take him, Mom. And they're going to take the house too. The words sliced into me deeper than any betrayal I had felt before. Betrayal from my parents, from the man who once promised to love me forever, now circling back to finish what he started when he walked out with Tiffany. I closed my eyes, trying to stop the tears from falling, but one slipped down my cheek. I felt Ava's small hand on mine, squeezing it with surprising strength. Please, Mom. We have to leave before they make an announcement, before they do something you can't stop. I opened my eyes and looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the fear, the desperation, and the fierce protectiveness in her gaze. I can't leave Logan, I whispered. Ava's lip quivered. Then we get him and we leave together. From the ballroom, I heard the sound of a glass being tapped, followed by my father's voice, clear and calm, calling for everyone's attention. Charlotte, come on. Ava urged, tugging at my hand. I looked toward the ballroom, seeing Jason lift Logan onto the small stage, my father standing proudly beside them, his hand on Logan's shoulder. The guests were turning, smiling, lifting their glasses, ready to celebrate. I felt Ava's hand pulling me back, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom, please. Before it's too late. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between staying silent or protecting your family? What would you have done if you were me? Share in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. I used to think my family was wealthy because they worked hard, but Ava just pulled me into a truth I wasn't ready to face. We stood outside the ballroom, the soft hum of the party pressing against the heavy doors behind us. I could still hear my father's voice echoing, thanking everyone for being there to celebrate their 45th anniversary. I imagined the smiles, the clinking glasses, the polished laughter. Ava's hands were cold as she held onto me, her eyes fierce, refusing to look away. When I asked, my voice hoarse, she swallowed. A few months ago, I was doing school online at Grandpa's house. Grandma told me to use his office since it was quiet. I felt my pulse in my throat. Ava, you shouldn't have been looking through his things. She shook her head, her hair brushing across her pale cheeks. I wasn't trying to. He left the papers on his desk, Mom. They had your name and Jason's and Logan's. I didn't understand, so I took pictures. The cold air from the hallway vents brushed against my arms, but I barely felt it. What kind of papers? Ava's eyes glistened as she opened her phone, scrolling quickly before turning the screen toward me. These. My eyes scanned over the blurry photos. They were documents, some typed, some with handwritten notes in the margins in my father's sharp handwriting. I saw words like transfer of ownership, trust, realignment, Jason Carter as legal guardian, Logan Miller Carter heir. I felt the room spin as I tried to process the words. Why would they do this? I whispered, more to myself than to her. Ava's voice cracked. Because they think Logan is the perfect Miller. He's a boy, he's easy. He won't ask questions. I shook my head, stepping back, pressing a hand to my chest as if I could stop the pain spreading there. And me? I asked quietly, my voice trembling. Ava wiped at her eyes roughly. Grandpa says I'm too much like you. Too independent, too emotional, hard to control. I stared at her, seeing a reflection of myself in her defiance, in her fear, in the way she stood her ground despite being terrified. Mom, I didn't know what to do, so I called Aunt Renee. Ava said, glancing away as if ashamed. My breath caught. Renee, honey, we don't talk to her. Ava's chin lifted. You don't, but I did. The name pulled up memories I had tried to bury. My younger sister Renee, who had fought my father years ago when he tried to cut her out of the family trust after she married someone he didn't approve of. She left Boston, moved to Denver, and never came back. What did she say to you? I asked. Ava's eyes filled again. She said Grandpa used to do this. He'd wait until family events until everyone was smiling and clapping, and then he'd announce decisions he'd already made so no one could say no without looking crazy. My legs felt weak and I leaned against the wall for support. She said he did it to her mom. He called her ungrateful, unstable, made everyone think she was the problem. And he took everything she was supposed to have. My throat tightened, the tears stinging, but I held them back. Renee told me to watch for the signs. Ava continued, her voice shaking. And I've seen them. Mom. Grandpa meeting with Jason when you're not around. Grandma telling Logan about private schools, how much better his life would be. I felt a deep ache in my chest as I thought about Logan, about the way he looked at Jason with that hopeful glow, the way my parents showered him with attention while ignoring Ava's quiet presence. Ava looked back down at her phone, her hands trembling. They're going to do it tonight, Mom. I know it. They're going to announce something and it will be too late. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying to keep from crying, trying to keep from screaming. Ava stepped closer, forcing me to meet her eyes. Mom, if you don't leave now, they will take everything from you. I felt the blood drain from my face as Ava's words sank in. The laughter and soft music from the ballroom felt miles away now. Ava, I whispered, are you sure about this? She didn't flinch. I'm sure, Mom. I've seen how they look at Logan, how Grandpa calls him the future. And I've heard them talk about you when you're not there. A sharp pain tightened in my chest. What do you mean, talk about me? Ava hesitated, glancing away, then looked back with tears brimming. They say you're struggling. That you're emotional. That you're not focused on what's best for Logan. I pressed a hand to my forehead, feeling the cold sweat forming at my hairline. Did you tell Renee everything? Ava nodded. I sent her the pictures. She said we need to be careful, that we can't let them corner us. I sank onto a nearby bench, my knees too weak to hold me. Ava sat beside me, her small hand gripping mine with surprising strength. I thought this party was for them, I said softly. For them to celebrate their marriage, their life. Ava's eyes flashed with anger. No, Mom. It's for them to show off their control. I shook my head, still wanting to deny it, still wanting to believe my parents were trying to help me. They wouldn't take Logan from me. Ava let out a shaky breath. They already think he belongs to them, Mom. Grandpa thinks Logan is his second chance. My mind flashed to Logan's smile, the way he had laughed with Jason, how he had stood so proudly next to my father for pictures. My sweet boy who just wanted to be loved, to feel included, to feel special. Did Renee say what to do? I asked. My voice barely above a whisper. She said to get out before they make it official. Ava said, her jaw tightening. Once Grandpa announces it, it will be harder for you to fight back. People will take his side. I swallowed hard, my pulse thudding in my ears. Ava, I can't just leave Logan. Then we get him, she said, her eyes fierce. We get him and we leave. I looked at my daughter, truly seeing her for the first time in months, the fear, the bravery, the love in her eyes. She had done all of this to protect me, to protect her brother. I took a deep breath, wiping the tears that had started to fall. Okay, I whispered. We get Logan and we leave. Ava's shoulders dropped with relief and she nodded quickly. We have to do it now before they start their speech. I stood, smoothing my dress with trembling hands, forcing my breathing to slow. I peeked through the crack in the ballroom doors, seeing Jason standing next to my father, Logan at their side, holding a small trophy my father must have given him. My mother was beaming, clapping her hands, calling people to gather near the stage. Jason's hand rested on Logan's shoulder, possessive, casual, like it belonged there. I felt rage building under the fear. They had planned this for months, using my own child as leverage, using my exhaustion and my desperation against me. Ava touched my arm. Mom. I looked at her, nodded once, and pulled the door open. The smell of champagne and roses hit me as I stepped into the room. Conversations quieted as people turned to look, smiles still plastered on their faces, unaware of the storm brewing. My father's eyes met mine and I saw it. The calculation. The pity. The confidence. He raised his glass slightly and his lips curled into a practiced smile. Charlotte, he called, his voice warm and strong. Come join us, dear. We're just about to announce something special. I felt Ava's hand slip into mine, steadying me, reminding me of what mattered. And in that moment, I knew we were out of time. What would you have done if you were me? Share in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. I saw the pleading look in Ava's eyes, the look I used to ignore when I still believed in my parents. She squeezed my hand as we stood near the edge of the ballroom, the lights warm and deceptive above us. The soft music faded into the background as my heartbeat pounded in my ears. Mom now, Ava whispered, her voice trembling. I glanced at Logan, who was standing beside my father holding the small trophy like it was the most important thing in the world. Thomas was laughing, his hand firm on Logan's shoulder, guiding him toward the small stage near the cake. My mother appeared in front of me, her perfume strong, her smile sharp. Charlotte, where are you going? Margaret asked, her voice too sweet, too calm. Ava isn't feeling well, I said, forcing the words out as steadily as I could. We need to leave. Margaret's smile faltered for a second before she recovered. Nonsense. She'll be fine. Jason and your father are about to share something important for the family. I felt Ava's hand tighten her body, pressing closer to mine. Mom, please, she whispered again. Before I could answer, Jason stepped up, his presence filling the small space around us. His eyes moved over me, stopping on Ava before returning to my face. Charlotte, he said softly, you should stay for this. It's about Logan's future. His voice was gentle, almost kind, the way it used to be when he would convince me to drop my own plans for his. But I heard the edge underneath, the quiet threat, the ownership in the way he said Logan's name. I looked past Jason to see my father watching me, his smile thin, his eyes cold, his hand still on Logan's shoulder. Logan was laughing at something Thomas said, looking up at him with trust, with hope. I felt my chest tighten, the fear, the betrayal, the rage all twisting together until I couldn't breathe. No, I said, my voice louder than I intended. We're leaving. Jason's eyes narrowed, the warmth dropping from his expression. Charlotte, don't make a scene. This is important. I shook my head, reaching for Logan. Logan, come here, sweetheart. Logan turned, confusion crossing his face. But Grandpa said Logan now, I said, my voice firm. Margaret's hand touched my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Charlotte, don't do this. I pulled away, stepping toward Logan, who was frozen, glancing between me and my father. I crouched down, forcing a smile as tears burned at the corners of my eyes. It's okay, baby, I said softly. We're going home. Logan's lip trembled, but he nodded, stepping toward me. I grabbed his hand, feeling the small warm weight of it in mine, grounding me. I stood facing Jason, who was glaring at me now, his jaw tight. You're making a mistake, he said, under his breath. I ignored him, turning to see the room watching us, the guests whispering, their eyes wide, some looking away, others staring with curiosity. I felt Ava press closer to my side, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. We turned, walking toward the exit, my heels clicking against the polished floor, the sound sharp in the sudden quiet. As we reached the door, I felt my father's gaze on my back, heavy, burning. I didn't look back. We stepped out into the cool night air, the door closing behind us, muffling the sounds of the party we had just left. I took a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs, clearing the fog that had been clouding my mind. We walked quickly toward the car, Logan's small hand in mine, Ava close on my other side. When we reached the car, I unlocked it with shaking hands, helping Logan into the backseat. Ava climbed in beside him, pulling the door closed. I slid into the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. As we pulled out of the parking lot, the lights of the hotel fading behind us, Ava let out a shaky breath. Mom, she said, her voice low, but steady. I need to show you what I've captured. The road out of the hotel was quiet, streetlights flickering as we passed under them. Logan's head rested against the window, his small face pale in the glow, his trophy clutched to his chest. He didn't say a word, but I could feel his confusion filling the car. Ava was breathing hard, her phone in her lap, her eyes fixed ahead. She looked older than 16 in that moment, holding in fear, anger, and something stronger I hadn't seen in her before. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, the cold leather grounding me as we drove through the Boston night. When I stopped at a red light, I turned to look at her. Ava, what is it you need to show me? She met my eyes, her jaw tense. Mom, pull over somewhere. We can't do this while you're driving. I nodded, taking the next right into a quiet CVS parking lot, the fluorescent lights buzzing above the empty spaces. I parked and turned off the engine, the silence inside the car heavy as the ticking of the engine filled the air. Logan shifted in the back, clutching his trophy tighter, glancing at me with wide, unsure eyes. "Mom," he said softly, "did I do something wrong?" The words stabbed me, and I turned to him, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "No, baby," I said, reaching back to squeeze his hand. "You did nothing wrong. We just needed to leave early." His lip trembled, and he looked down at the trophy, hugging it closer. Ava took a deep breath, unlocking her phone with shaking fingers. "Mom, look," she said, holding it up. I turned back, the screen lighting up her pale face as she scrolled through the photos she had taken. Images of documents, signatures, highlighted lines in my father's handwriting, phrases like custodial transfer, property title adjustment, Jason Carter as guardian, and Logan Miller Carter. My vision blurred as I scrolled, the words swimming together, each one a punch to the chest. "Where did you get these?" I whispered. "Grandpa's office," she said, her voice flat. "The day he told me to study in there. He left them out, and I knew I had to take pictures." I pressed a hand to my mouth, shaking my head. "I can't believe this." Ava leaned closer, her voice low, firm. "Believe it, Mom. They were going to announce it tonight. That Jason would take over Logan's guardianship, and that Grandpa would move the house into Jason's name." I closed my eyes, trying to steady the storm inside me. All those Sunday dinners, all the fake concern, the gifts, the smiles, for Logan's future speeches. They had been grooming us, grooming Logan to accept this as normal. "They can't just take him," I whispered, more to myself than to her. Ava's hand gripped mine, pulling me back. "They can't if you fight, Mom. But if they made it public tonight, it would look like you were the one causing problems." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I turned to look at Logan, who was watching us quietly, confusion and fear mixing in his wide eyes. "Mom," he said, "does Grandpa not want me to live with you anymore?" My heart shattered, but I swallowed the pain, leaning back to brush the hair from his forehead. "No, baby," I said softly. "You're staying with me." His eyes filled with tears, but he nodded, clutching his trophy tighter. I turned back to Ava, who was watching me with those fierce, determined eyes. "Mom, we need to call Aunt Renee," she said. "She said she'd help." I nodded slowly, gripping the steering wheel again. "Okay," I said, my voice steady for the first time that night. "We're going to fight." Ava let out a breath she had been holding, leaning back in her seat. The night outside felt cold, but inside the car a strange warmth began to build between us. We weren't alone anymore. Have you ever had to stand up to your own family to protect your children? What would you have done if you were me? Share in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. I never thought I would sit in a parked car with my daughter, looking at papers with my name that no longer belonged to me. Ava's hands were shaking as she held her phone out to me, the glow of the screen lighting up her tired young face. We were parked in the back corner of a quiet Target lot, the only sound the low hum of cars passing on the street. "Mom, just look," she whispered. I took the phone, my fingers cold as I scrolled through the photos. Deed transfer documents with my name in bold, but with Jason's signature as the recipient. Notes scribbled in my father's tight handwriting, phrases like "protect Logan's future, Charlotte, unstable, Jason as trustee." My chest tightened as I kept scrolling, seeing my life and everything I had fought to keep laid out in legal language that twisted the truth. I saw the title page of the trust I thought was meant for Logan's college now showing Jason as the controlling trustee with Logan's name beneath his, binding them together in a way that excluded me entirely. My voice cracked as I whispered, "How did you get these, Ava?" She looked down, tears clinging to her lashes. "I told you Grandpa left them out. I took pictures because I didn't understand what I was seeing." I swallowed hard, forcing down the panic rising in my throat. "And there's more," Ava said, her voice breaking. She opened her recordings app and pressed play. At first there was a rustling sound, then Jason's voice, low, confident. "She won't fight you on this, Thomas. She needs your help too much to push back." My father's voice came through, calm and cold. "She will sign when the time comes. Logan will be better off. She will see that." I pressed a hand to my mouth, the cold of my wedding band now just a piece of metal biting into my skin. "They've been planning this," I whispered, shaking my head. "They're using Logan to get me to give up everything." Ava wiped her tears, looking at me with raw, honest fear. "Mom, Aunt Renee texted." She said if we don't act now, you could lose Logan. My breath caught. What did she say exactly? Ava handed me her phone again. Renee's message was there, the words glowing on the screen. Don't wait. They will file for custody under financial instability. They will use Logan to force you to sign over the house. It's what they did to me. Get a lawyer. Now. I felt the world tilt around me, the weight of every moment I had trusted my parents crashing down on me all at once. Every dinner, every promise to help with Logan's schooling, every fake smile. Ava's sob pulled me back. She pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. I don't want to lose Logan, she cried, her voice muffled, but I don't want them to hurt you either, Mom. I reached over, pulling her into me, holding her tight as she cried, my own tears slipping silently down my cheeks. I'm so sorry, I whispered into her hair. I should have seen this coming. She pulled back, her eyes swollen but clear. Mom, we can't let them do this. I looked into her eyes, seeing the strength in her, the fierce loyalty she carried at 16, the strength I thought I had lost. I took a deep breath, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. Tomorrow we start this fight, I said, my voice steady despite the fear curling in my stomach. Ava nodded, pressing her forehead to mine. We sat there in the dark parking lot, holding on to each other as I realized everything was about to change. The car felt too small as we sat in silence, the weight of the truth pressing down on both of us. I could see Logan in the rearview mirror, fast asleep, his small hand still wrapped around the trophy, unaware of how close he was to being taken from me. Ava sniffed, wiping her eyes, her voice small. Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you sooner. I reached over, brushing the hair from her forehead. No, Ava. You were braver than I was. You saw what I didn't want to see. She looked out the window, her breath fogging the glass. I just don't understand how Grandpa and Grandma could do this to us. I swallowed hard, my hands tightening on the steering wheel. Because to them, family is about control, not love. Ava turned back to me, her eyes tired but determined. What are we going to do? I took a slow breath, glancing down at Renee's last message on Ava's phone. My sister had been right all along, and I had pushed her away because it was easier to believe my parents' lies. We're going to fight, I said, my voice steady. First we get a lawyer. One who doesn't know Grandpa. Ava nodded quickly. Aunt Renee said she can give us a name, someone in Newton. She said he helped her when she was fighting Grandpa. I nodded, forcing the fear down. We'll call her in the morning. We'll get copies of all these pictures and recordings to him. Ava looked down at her phone, scrolling through the files she had collected like a soldier counting weapons before a battle. I'll organize them tonight, label everything. I can back them up on a flash drive so we have proof. Pride and grief twisted together in my chest as I watched her. You shouldn't have had to carry this alone, Ava. She glanced up, blinking tears away. I didn't want them to hurt you, Mom. Or take Logan. I reached over and pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly, feeling the way her shoulders finally dropped as she let herself relax in my arms. I won't let them take him, I whispered. I promise. Her arms wrapped around me tighter. Promise me you won't let them hurt you either. I nodded, pulling back to look her in the eyes. I promise. She wiped her tears with the sleeve of her sweater, taking a deep breath. I'm scared, Mom. I know, I said softly. Me too, but under that fear there was a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. The understanding that I was done letting other people dictate my life, my worth, and my family's future. I looked back at Logan, the soft rise and fall of his small chest reminding me why I had to fight. I turned the key, starting the car, the hum of the engine grounding me as I pulled out of the parking lot heading home. The lights of Boston blurred past us as Ava leaned her head against the window, exhaustion pulling at her, but her phone still clutched in her hand, ready. As we pulled into the driveway of our small apartment, I parked, turning off the engine, letting the silence settle. Ava turned to me, her eyes glinting in the darkness. Tomorrow, right? I nodded, reaching for her hand. Tomorrow, I said, we start this fight. Have you ever had to stand up against people you love to protect your family? What would you have done if you were me? Share in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. I used to fear courtrooms, fear my parents, fear Jason, but that fear vanished when I saw my daughter willing to fight. The morning after we left the party, I called Grace Thompson from the kitchen, the phone shaking in my hand, as Ava sat across from me, her laptop open, files organized and ready. Grace's voice was calm, direct, nothing like the lawyers Jason's family had used during the divorce. "Charlotte, I've reviewed what Renee sent. Your daughter did the right thing," Grace said. "The photos and recordings have legal value. We can act." I pressed a hand to my chest, closing my eyes. "What do we need to do?" "We'll file an emergency injunction to freeze any property transfers. We'll also document the manipulation and the attempts to use Logan to pressure you," she said. My voice came out small. "Will this protect Logan?" "It's a start," Grace replied. "But we need to move fast before they file something themselves." Ava glanced up at me, her eyes steady. "We're ready." That afternoon, I took Logan to see Dr. Ellis, a family therapist Renee had recommended in Cambridge. Logan held my hand tightly, his trophy still in his backpack, the edges of the plastic already worn from where he rubbed it for comfort. "Why do I have to talk to someone, Mom?" Logan asked, his voice small, as we walked up the stairs to the office. I knelt in front of him, brushing his hair back. "Because sometimes people say things to kids that can be confusing, and I want you to have a place where you can talk about it." His eyes dropped. "Like Grandpa saying I should live with Dad?" Pain shot through me, but I kept my voice calm. "Exactly like that." He nodded, gripping my hand tighter as we walked into the office. While Logan was in session, I sat in the waiting room, staring at the wall, replaying every moment I had ignored, every time my parents had offered help, every time Jason had smiled that fake gentle smile. My phone buzzed, and I saw Margaret's name on the screen. I let it ring, but she called again. On the third call, I answered. "Charlotte, please," Margaret said, her voice shaky. "Don't let this become hate. We're family." My jaw tightened. Family doesn't manipulate. Family doesn't take children to get what they want. She sighed, and I could hear the controlled tears she used to get her way. "Your father only wants what's best for Logan." "You mean what's best for him?" I shot back. Silence, then a soft, cold voice. "You're making a mistake, Charlotte." Before I could respond, she hung up. That night Thomas called, his voice clipped, every word heavy. "If you go through with this, Charlotte, we will cut off the financial support we've been giving you," he said. I looked around my small kitchen, the secondhand table, the stack of bills on the counter. "Then cut it off," I said, my voice steady. "You've used that to control me long enough." A beat of silence, then the line went dead. I set the phone down, breathing hard, my hands shaking, but not from fear. Ava stepped into the kitchen, her eyes searching mine. "What did they say?" she asked. I wiped my eyes, forcing a smile for her. "They're scared." She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around me. "Good." I hugged her back, realizing how much of my fear had already begun to die the moment I chose to believe my daughter over the people who raised me. The next morning, Grace called, her voice urgent. "Charlotte, we have a problem," she said. "Jason is preparing paperwork to file for full custody of Logan. We need to act now." I froze, gripping the phone so tightly I thought it might crack. "Full custody," I managed to say, my voice low. Grace's voice was calm but firm. "He's trying to file before we can secure your position. They're claiming financial instability and emotional unfitness, using the trust documents and the narrative your parents have helped him build." My chest tightened, anger flaring hot under the fear. "Using my own parents' words against me?" "Yes," Grace said. "But we have Ava's recordings and we have proof of coercion. We can file an emergency response and a counterclaim, but you need to be ready, Charlotte." I looked around my kitchen, the sink full of breakfast dishes, Logan's cereal bowl still on the table, his school backpack leaning against the chair. "I'm ready," I said. "Good," Grace replied. "I'll draft the paperwork today. We need to show the court that removing Logan from your custody would be damaging, that this is about control and not his well-being." Ava was standing in the doorway, holding her phone, listening. Her eyes were sharp, determined. "Grace, what do you need from me today?" I asked. "Statements from you and Ava, clear timelines, copies of the photos and recordings," she said. "And we need to get Logan's therapist to provide an initial report about the pressure he's been under." I nodded, writing it down on a sticky note as Ava moved closer. "We'll get it done," I said. After we hung up, Ava spoke, her voice low but steady. "They're not taking him, Mom. No, I said, looking at her, feeling that resolve rising in me again. They're not. That afternoon I called Dr. Ellis and explained the situation. She agreed to draft a statement confirming that Logan had expressed confusion about where he should live and shared details about the comments my parents and Jason had made to him. Logan was sitting on the couch, hugging his pillow, his small face pale as he watched cartoons too quiet for a boy who used to fill the apartment with noise. I sat next to him, brushing his hair back gently. "Hey buddy," I said softly. He turned to me, his eyes big. "Am I in trouble?" My heart broke, but I kept my smile calm. "No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. None of this is your fault." He looked down at his hands. "Grandpa said if I live with Dad I can have a big room and go to a school with a pool." I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay even. "You know I love you, right?" He nodded, not looking up. "I will always fight for you," I said, leaning down to kiss his forehead. He wrapped his small arms around me, holding on tight. That night, while Logan slept, Ava and I sat at the kitchen table going through every file, every photo, every recording. She labeled folders while I wrote my statement for Grace, detailing every moment I could remember where Jason and my parents had tried to pressure me, where they used Logan as leverage. At midnight, we were still at the table, exhaustion pulling at us, but neither of us ready to stop. Ava looked up from her laptop, her eyes glassy from staring at the screen. "Mom," she said, "I'm proud of you." I felt tears prick my eyes, but I smiled. "I'm proud of you too, baby." We shared a quiet moment, the weight of what we were fighting for sinking in, the fear still there, but no longer in control. My phone buzzed, lighting up the table with Grace's name. I answered, my heart thudding. "Charlotte," Grace said, "we need to file first thing in the morning. Be ready." I took a deep breath, holding Ava's hand. "I'm ready." Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to fight for your family against people you once trusted? What would you have done if you were me? Share in the comments. The day I walked into court, I saw my father smile at Jason while Logan looked at me with fear in his eyes, not understanding why we were there. The hallway outside the family court was cold, the smell of old coffee and paper mixing with the tension that buzzed under my skin. Logan sat on the bench next to Ava, clutching his small backpack, his eyes darting between me and the door. Grace stood beside me, her file thick with the evidence we had gathered. She placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Charlotte, we go in there, and we speak the truth," she said. I nodded, but my stomach twisted as the doors opened and we were called inside. Thomas was already there, sitting with his attorney, a man with silver hair and a smug expression that made me want to scream. My father looked calm, confident, dressed in a dark suit, nodding politely to the judge as if this was just another business meeting. And next to him was Jason, wearing a gray suit, Tiffany at his side, her hand resting on his arm. She wouldn't meet my eyes, but Jason did, giving me a tight, cold smile before turning to speak quietly with my father. I reached down, squeezing Ava's hand as we sat, Logan between us, his small fingers tangled in the strap of his backpack. The judge, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes but a firm tone, called the session to order, stating we were here for an emergency custody dispute and property injunction. Thomas's lawyer stood first, laying out their claim in smooth, practiced words. "Your Honor, we are requesting a transfer of custody of Logan Carter to his father, Jason Carter, due to Charlotte Miller's financial instability, inconsistent employment, and emotional volatility, which we believe create an unsafe environment for the child." I felt the blood drain from my face as Logan's head snapped toward me, confusion and fear in his eyes. Grace stood, her voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Thomas Miller, Mr. Jason Carter, and Miss Tiffany Brooks have conspired to manipulate the child using false promises and coercion to pressure Miss Miller into signing over property and custody. We will be submitting recordings, photographs, and testimony to prove this manipulation." The judge looked between the two sides, her brow furrowed. "I will review the materials," she said. "But before proceeding, I understand there is a minor present who wishes to speak." I turned, shocked to see Ava standing, her hands clenched, her chin lifted. "Ava," I whispered, but she shook her head. The judge nodded gently. "Miss Miller, you may speak." Ava stepped forward, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each word. "I've seen what they've done to my mom," she said, her eyes moving to Jason and Thomas. "I've heard them say she would be too scared to fight back, that she needed them too much to say no." Thomas shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening, but Ava didn't stop. "I've seen them promise my little brother things to make him think living with them would be better, while telling him that my mom couldn't give him the same life." She took a breath, tears slipping down her cheeks, but her voice stayed strong. "I can't let them destroy my mom anymore. I can't let them take my brother." I felt the air leave my lungs as I watched her, my brave, fierce girl, standing in front of the court, refusing to be silent. The judge leaned forward, her eyes softening. "Thank you, Miss Miller. Your statement will be included in this proceeding." Ava stepped back, sitting beside Logan, who turned and hugged her tightly, burying his face in her shoulder. I reached over, touching her hand, and for a moment the fear in me quieted, replaced by the strength I saw in my daughter. Grace stood next to me as the judge reviewed the files, the quiet hum of the courtroom louder than any noise I had ever known. Thomas leaned back, whispering something to Jason, who glanced at me with that cold, confident smirk he used to wear when he thought he had already won. I felt Ava's hand slip into mine, grounding me. Logan pressed closer to my side, looking up at me, his small face pale, his eyes searching mine for answers I couldn't give yet. The judge cleared her throat, looking directly at me. "Miss Miller, you may speak." I stood, my legs trembling, but I lifted my chin, letting the fear burn away in the heat of everything they had tried to take from me. "Your Honor, I have made mistakes." I began, my voice shaking only for a moment, but loving my children and protecting them has never been one of them. I took a breath, letting my eyes fall on Thomas, then Jason. "My parents and my ex-husband have tried to use my financial struggles to take my son, to pressure me to sign over my home, and to destroy the stability I have fought to give my children since the divorce." Jason shifted in his seat, but I kept going. "I have recordings of them discussing this plan, proof that they used Logan to manipulate me, telling him that living with his father would give him a better life while trying to make me feel worthless." My voice grew stronger, my fear fading with every word. "They have tried to convince me that I am alone, that I need them to survive, but I am not alone. I have my children, and I will not let them be used as pawns in a game of control." The judge nodded, her expression unreadable as she turned back to Grace. "I will need time to review all evidence," she said. "For now, the current custody arrangement will remain in place." Logan's hand gripped mine tighter, and I squeezed back. "In addition," the judge continued, "I am issuing a temporary injunction to freeze any transfer of assets or property in dispute until further review." Thomas's lawyer started to stand, but the judge raised her hand. "I will not tolerate manipulation of a child to gain leverage in a financial dispute. This court will take all necessary measures to protect Logan's best interests." The gavel came down, and the room was suddenly full of noise as people stood, papers shuffled, and chairs scraped against the floor. Ava hugged Logan, whispering in his ear, calming him as he started to cry softly, the tension of the day too much for his small shoulders. Grace leaned in, her voice low. "This is a good step, Charlotte. We have time to build a stronger case." I nodded, feeling tears slip down my cheeks, but they were not tears of defeat. We walked out of the courtroom, Logan's small hand in mine. Ava on my other side, Grace beside us. Just as we stepped into the hallway, Jason stepped forward, blocking our path for a moment. His eyes were cold, his jaw tight as he leaned in close enough that only I could hear. "You will regret fighting your own family, Charlotte," he hissed. I looked him in the eye, my fear gone, my voice steady. "We're not family anymore." I walked past him, my children beside me, as I felt the weight of the courthouse doors close behind us, knowing the real battle was only beginning. Have you ever had to stand your ground against people you once trusted? What would you have done if you were me? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. I thought I was about to lose everything, but I didn't know my daughter was the strength I needed. The weeks after court moved like a storm and a sunrise all at once. Papers filed, calls made. Meetings with Grace at her small office in Newton, where the coffee was burnt but the hope was real. Logan kept going to Dr. Ellis twice a week. At first he was quiet, clutching his backpack, looking down whenever she asked him questions. But slowly he started to talk, started to understand that love didn't have to come with fear or conditions. One rainy Tuesday, he crawled into my lap after therapy, his small hands on my cheeks, tears in his eyes. "Mom," he whispered, "I want to stay with you." I hugged him so tightly, I thought I might break, my tears mixing with his, the sound of the rain on the car roof like a promise that we were safe now. Meanwhile, the walls around Thomas began to crack. Grace called to tell me the family court had ordered an investigation into misuse of the family trust. There were whispers of tax irregularities, of questionable transfers of power Thomas thought he could hold on to forever. And Jason, the man who once held my hand at our wedding, who swore to protect me, only to betray me when it was convenient. Tiffany left him unable to handle the pressure of court filings, the subpoenas, the reality that he was not the man she thought he was when he was promising her expensive dinners and lake house weekends. The day she left, he called me. I let it ring. I owed him nothing. Ava was my shadow and my light during those weeks. She organized files for Grace, labeling recordings and photos, color-coding folders with a focus I had never seen in her before. Sometimes I would find her in her room, laptop open, tears in her eyes as she rewatched the videos she had taken, the moments she had captured to save us. "Ava," I would say softly, stepping into her room, "you don't have to watch them again." She would wipe her tears, shaking her head. "Mom, I need to remember why we're fighting." She didn't know she was the reason I could keep fighting. During those weeks, Renee moved in with us for a while, helping me pack, helping me sort through the pieces of the life I had built on the fragile hope that Thomas and Margaret's love was unconditional. We found a small apartment in Cambridge, bright and warm, the kind of place where the sun came through the windows in the morning, where I could hear Logan's laughter echo in the hallway, where Ava could study without feeling like she was being watched. On the day we signed the lease, I stood in the empty living room, the keys in my hand, Ava and Logan on either side of me. "This is ours," I whispered, my voice breaking. Ava squeezed my hand, smiling. "Yeah, Mom, it's ours." On our first morning in the new apartment, I made pancakes in the tiny kitchen while Logan colored dinosaurs at the table and Ava played music from her phone, humming softly. There was no tension in the air, no footsteps outside the door making me flinch, no fear of what would happen if I said the wrong thing. Later that week, Thomas called, his number flashing across my screen, the past pressing in on me for a moment before I pressed answer. "Charlotte," he said, his voice tired, stripped of its power, "we'd like to see Logan." I closed my eyes, steadying my breath, glancing at Logan and Ava laughing in the living room, building a blanket fort. "You can see him," I said, "but there will be rules." He was quiet, the silence stretching before he finally said, "What rules?" "You will not speak to him about where he should live or what he should want. You will not use him to pressure me. If you do, the visits stop." He sighed, the sound old, defeated. "We just want to see our grandson. And I want him to have grandparents who love him, not use him," I replied. We set a date for a supervised visit at a park in Somerville. When we arrived, Thomas and Margaret were sitting on a bench, looking smaller than I remembered, their eyes watching Logan as he ran ahead to the swings. Margaret looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "He's gotten so big." I nodded, standing beside them, not sitting, holding my boundaries, even as my heart pulled in a dozen directions. Logan ran back, smiling. "Grandma, Grandpa, look at me." They smiled, and for a moment I saw the people I used to believe they were. But I didn't forget who they chose to be when they thought I was too weak to fight. That evening, back at the apartment, I made spaghetti while Ava set the table, lighting a small candle she found at the store. We sat together, eating, laughing, when Logan told us about a joke he heard at school, Ava rolling her eyes and groaning at the bad punchline. After dinner, we sat on the small balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in streaks of orange and pink. I looked over at Ava, her face calm, older somehow, the weight she carried shaping her into something strong and unbreakable. "You know you saved me, right?" I said softly. She turned to me, her eyes soft, a small smile on her lips. "Mom, you saved yourself." I shook my head, blinking back tears. "You saved me, Ava. But do you know you also saved yourself?" She looked out at the darkening sky, the city lights starting to twinkle, her hands folded in her lap. "Because we're a real family," she said, her voice sure, steady. I reached over, taking her hand, squeezing it gently as Logan came outside, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders, crawling into my lap. The three of us sat there holding each other, the cool breeze carrying away the fear, leaving only the truth. We were free. Have you ever had to choose your peace over family expectations? What would you have done if you were me? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.